Welcome to Degecast and Dragons.
I thought this was going to be hard.
Welcome to Degecast and Dragons.
Who wants some of the Ripper?
They're state champs, baby. Woo!
He's clearly Captain. I'm a man of the people.
Shattered world.
Ripper knows. Ripper always knows. Degecast.
And welcome back to the Degecast, the supplemental podcast for our YouTube show, Degecast and Dragons. And today, we are going to be presenting part 2 of our interview with Jay from Feral Gamers Inc., the creator of Ghost Ops. Hey, I'm your host, Nate Lindberg, and you can find me all over social media at Nate Lindberg. And be sure to follow our brand on social media, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Look for us, Degetime, D-E-G-E-T-I-M-E. That's where you'll find us, guys. That is where you'll find us. And now, without further ado, let's just jump right back into this interview with Jay from Feral Gamers Inc. So we're talking a bit more about the therapeutic aspects of gaming and things like that. Well, what have you found to be, or how do you think that Ghost Ops can help other people? I know before we actually played the game ourselves, I know Conrad talked to you a little bit about testing this out with different vets and things like that. So I don't know if you might be able to kind of talk to that a little bit. I know personally, I'm really interested in how these vets handled the game, how they liked it, and because kind of when I first started thinking about this and Conrad first approached me with it, I was thinking that vets might kind of steer away from this game, especially if they had PTSD and a lot of negative connotations to their time in the service. And from what I was talking with Conrad about, you seem to find the opposite. So I was wondering if you might be able to speak a little bit to that.
When I first designed Ghost Ops, when I first came up with the idea and I was designing it and I was working things out, the last thing in my mind was anything to do with PTSD, to be honest. It hadn't even occurred to me, really. It just wasn't central to any. I see role-playing games as games that just people play and they either enjoy them or they don't, really. When I finally started getting into it and we'd done with Kickstarter and that had been successful, it was after that point when we started the Facebook group that I realized how many vets were actually part of it and actually backed it. And there was a hell of a lot of people who are still actively serving and people who had, now been retired from serving. And I was actually kind of surprised how many people were involved because I mean, before I did Ghost Ops, I know nothing about the military service. I never served in the military myself. I don't know much about it. Ghost Ops is quite American-centric in some ways, and I knew even less about that really. So it was kind of strange for me that people who were vets or were still active were actually really interested and really enjoying it. And while I was writing it, we got approached by a military psychologist, an actual person who works with people with PTSD. He kind of sort of said, you're gonna have PTSD with a game, really. And I said no. And the reason being it wasn't because I didn't want to deal with it. I didn't think I'd do it justice. I didn't want to be somebody who pretended to understand what it was and maybe made it didn't do a good job of it. I mean, it's just with people's mental health. And I didn't want to presume, about that. And I didn't want to sort of say, yeah, let's do PTSD and then get it completely wrong. And somebody's going, no, whatever, right? But I didn't want to be the person that did that. So in one way, I felt it would be better just to avoid it completely in the game. For that reason, and also the fact that I felt that it would actually add an element to the game that may not be something that players would want to deal with, in a sense where, they were playing a game that would involve them, doing this, that, and the other, special forces operatives, and I didn't really want it kind of getting in the way, if you like. But since then, I mean, people have approached this, and and there's been not many. There's been a few. I mean, like I said, it was never my intention to have this as some sort of therapeutic tool for people. It was never, as I said, never crossed my mind. But I've had a few people come to me and say, it has helped because it allows me to kind of just sort out of my own head, and I don't really know in what way that would work. And I presume everybody's going to be different and how they approach their own sort of mental health issues and what their reasons behind the cause of the PTSD was. And I think that will vary from person to person. As I said, I'm not too aware of it. And the military psychologist we spoke to was very, very forthcoming. He was quite open about the whole thing. He's talked about us quite a lot. And yeah, like I said, we have had a couple of people come up and say, this has been really good. It's helped in various ways. And that's been brilliant, right? That's great. If people can come away from it, playing it, and actually get something out of it beyond just fun, then that's brilliant. But it was never my intention for that to be. I would never presume, and I would never think that I was good enough to be able to make something that would help people mentally. You know what I mean? That would just be too. That would just be unrealistic, I think.
So some of the things that we talk about in the wrap up with kind of why, like I thought that it would be helpful in particular for like PTSD and so with like treatment, the exposure to all of these different things can be extremely harsh. Like we look at that there's no real like impetus for it. Like the sound is you don't hear any loud sounds. The visuals aren't jarring. Unless your friends are truly hideous, I guess, then but otherwise, like you're there in a safe space, but also that you can go through the motions of things that you may have experienced. And now, like I kind of was saying before about reframing, but you're reframing like potentially bad experiences into ones that are much more palpable, as if not fun, and really just changing the way your brain is evaluating these different things. And I think that's a huge part of what it is, because the book itself is quite realistic. I think like going through like all the different special organizations and their descriptions with dates and all of that. So you have this realism for what you play as, and I think that gives credence to the ability to reframe it. Because like, right, if we had jet boots and mechs, laser vision, all these different things that would then make it more unrealistic, you wouldn't really be able to reframe the same way. So anyway, that's kind of some of the things that we touch on, or you would have just seen yesterday if you're watching this right after. But yeah, so does that make sense to you, Jay?
No, yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I suppose in a way I've never really thought about it in certain aspects, I guess. And I can see where somebody who plays this, who has got sort of PTSDs or versions of it, having a positive outcome to something would obviously help. Rather than negative outcomes, because the idea behind it is that you always win, right? So yeah, I can kind of see that. And like I said, it's if people can get that out of it, then that's even better. Really, that's brilliant.
We kind of touched on it a little bit at the beginning, but just out of curiosity, what do you think kind of sets Ghost Ops apart from other tabletop games?
In a general sense, it's like every other tabletop game. You've got the group, and you've got objectives, and you've got weapons, you have fights and stuff. But I think with the difference this makes is the fact that people can, and I get this a lot actually of a group, that people can join their own special forces, for their own country, and in a way feel, I don't know, maybe feel a part of that or something, because it's not just America, which, a lot of modern day games are set kind of in America. And if you're living in Sweden, or you're living in Germany, or you're living in wherever, Australia, you're kind of detached from it, because you don't live in America, right? So I get an awful lot of people come up to me and say, can I have a special forces group for Sweden, or for this country or that country? And I always try to I stuck them all in the expanded rules and stuff, but I always try to do that. I always try to get the people involved with the game. And so they get their own special forces in from their own country. So they can then join as their own country, if you like, rather than as an American or a British person or whatever. And I think that does help. And I think that makes a difference, because people can relate to it. They feel part of it more. They don't feel like, they're not elf or dwarf or something like that. They're actually part of something, even though they're not a special forces operative, which gives them that sense of withdrawal, I suppose, that sense of distance from it, that sense of, being something unique and different, like you would an elf or a paladin. You're also, in some way, attached to it, because you're a Swedish or a German or a Russian or a whatever paladin or dwarf, rather than just, And I think that kind of adds that kind of connecting. I don't know if I'm explaining it properly, but
No, I mean, I definitely agree with that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to me too. I mean, obviously, Conrad, Tony, and I are American, but I mean, if you are somebody from a country of Canada or like you said, Sweden or whatever, get a sense of pride for the country you live in. For the most part, I would say most people seem to. So yeah, you're able to jump into this game, and like you said, you're not playing something that you have really no attachment to, like a dwarf or paladin, elf, or what have you. It's although I'm sure people, like I know me, when I play a character, I eventually grow attachment to it, but you have a real life attachment to to this idea, this ideal. So no, I mean it certainly makes sense. Kind of it helps get invested a little bit as well.
Again, that's psychological, isn't it? I mean, and I think with being able to approach me and say, "Oh, you haven't got my country in there," and for me then to do that and to add that country in there, it then connects them more to the game, because I'll mention them in the credits, thanks to blah 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 blah, for because they brought it forward. I mean, some of the community have even sort of thrown me, I've done this rule and I've done this house, this home rule and stuff, and I've thrown it in the expanded books because it's interesting and it works and whatever. Do you know what I mean?
No, I mean that's cool. I mean, especially too where you are a one-man band. Obviously you very creative and whatnot. Don't get me wrong, but it's always nice to have kind of another perspective and another pair of eyes. So you've got some other people, especially players and just fans of the game that have ideas, and then they bring those ideas to you, and you actually make them a part of the game. That's really cool. Because I mean, not every developer would do something like that. So it definitely helps to kind of get your fans to feel more of a connection to your product and probably even future products. I like.
Yeah, I mean, there's a book actually called Joint Task Force, which was released for Ghost Ops, which is kind of an alternate rule set. It uses the same rules as Ghost Ops does, but it does it in a more kind of realistic way. And that was actually a Marine veteran, an ex-Marine sergeant, approached me and said, "Can I do a JTF book, Joint Task Force book?" And I said, "Yeah, no, that'd be great." So he wrote all of that. I just laid it all out. I did the artwork for it and put it all in there and stuff. But cool. He teaches the military. He's a military teacher now. Well, he actually retired from the Marines. So that was actually written by one of our community who's actually an ex-vet.
That's really cool.
And he's on drive-through. He makes, he gets all the money from it, apart from what drive-through takes. And I think I'd take a percentage. I'd take 10% or something like that because of the work I had to put into it, and the money I had to pay out. But yeah, he makes a majority of the cash from that. So, and he was like, when he first got it, he was like, "Wow, I've got my first book. I've actually got a printed book, and it's my name on it. It's great." Yeah. I mean,
that's really cool. Just random community member, and now you've kind of got like somebody you're working with and come out with another product. That's cool. That's really cool.
It all helps, I think, and I think it helps people's confidence as well, and it builds people up. And if that creates another person who can start writing other games and do other stuff, then that's great.
Yeah, one more independent developer, like we were kind of talking about earlier. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
Tony, I feel like this next question is right up your alley.
Let's say you're faced with a global threat, perhaps, I don't know, maybe a pandemic. Well, just for sake of argument, we'll call it a WOVID-19. What would your ideal Ghost Ops team be to help neutralize said threat or pandemic?
Right, my perfect Ghost Ops team. Well, I think we'd definitely want a Canadian sharpshooter on my team. Depends what my job was. I mean, it would really depend if it was just defense of my area, or if we were going to go in there and take out the scientists who caused this pandemic, maybe. But then, I'd definitely a Canadian sharpshooter would be great. An engineer would be handy, I think, so we could put out sort of drones and stuff. But
yeah, use them to like secure borders or something like that.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, since we'd have to go and stuff, and what we'd have to do.
So you take Canada, you take Britain.
Yeah, well, the Canadians have the best snipers. They had the best sniper. I don't know if it's been beaten yet, but it was great. The longest distance for a sniper shot has been the Canadians, so it's always good to have them on side.
Yeah, we did mention that in the episode.
Yeah.
And I think if I had to take anybody from Special Forces, they would have to be SAS because they are the best in the world.
That is England for you other two, if you didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Navy SEAL just for the if you ever doing the underwater bits. Yeah, so I think Canada, UK,
and America. Yeah,
possibly America.
This checks out.
Possibly America, Ranger, possibly America. Yeah, maybe a ranger in America.
Cool. And so, you've touched on this actually quite a bit throughout, but, can we expect additional content in the future? And I don't know, you've talked a little bit about some of the other projects you're working on, but I don't know if you want to maybe highlight some of them or talk a little bit more about what it is you're working on.
So relating to Ghost Ops with additional content, I will be doing a Kickstarter for Ghost Ops Second Strike, which is basically the second edition of the rulebook. It will change things up a little bit. We're using the same system, but a few things will change. There'll be a lot more backgrounds to choose from. Plus, also, I'm using a technology tier level thing where the actual core book itself will be set modern day, but there'll be a tier level where tier level 1 will be kind of set during the Second World War with the OSS, the beginnings of the SAS, and then you'll be tier level 2 will be sort of Cold War Vietnam era, and then tier level 3 will be modern day, tier level 4 will be near future, 20 years in the future, and then tier level 5 will be far future, based upon what DARPA are doing and what other sort of military agencies are doing within this moment with armor and weapons and so forth. So in theory, you'll be able to play the game in most of those types of settings straight from the book. And with that, we're going to be releasing settings books. So it'll be one set in the Second World War, one set in Vietnam, Cold War, and so forth and so on. So that's something we're doing. Basically, all the rules that people have kind of said, can you do this instead, or this doesn't work as well as that, or things that I've looked at and thought, well, that could have been done better, because it's been now, 3 years. I've basically been revamped and rebuilt within it. Now, Second Strike will come out probably next year, depending on when we do the Kickstarter. It'll be compatible with everything that's been released up to now. So you'll still be able to play the things you play now with it. So you already have a load of stuff available for it, basically. And this year we're going to be also I'm going to be releasing some more stuff for Ghost Ops. One of the things we want to do was Red Dawn. So you're playing civilians that basically battling against an invasion from an enemy force. So you basically play sort of like the Wolverines, but what I'm trying to do is basically get it so that you play in your own country rather than America. So it's not really set in the States per se. It's going to be set wherever you live, and you are the ones trying to fight back against an intruding force. So that's one of the things we're going to be doing for Ghost Ops. And that will be, as I said, whenever I do the Kickstarter, and then it will be next year for the release of that. So there's still a bit of time before it happens. So there's that. At the moment, I'm working on Black Iron, which is a fantasy role-playing game. It's a dark fantasy role-playing game. It's very, very dark fantasy. It's coming out as a D6 system, and it's also coming out as a D&D setting as well, 5th edition setting. So you'll be able to play in either the D6 or the D&D. Black Iron is very, very dark. The elves are basically the bad guys. They've kind of ruined everything and sort of buggered off to another dimension. And the world is kind of like in a nuclear winter. And you're basically trying to survive within this nuclear winter against corruptions and other stuff, and it's very involved. And again, that was Kickstarter and it funded very well, so that's good. Next to that, we're doing. I'm doing. There's Ghost Ops for solo missions. So basically, you'd be a solo Ghost Ops, which would kind of be like choose your own adventure type games.
Okay.
Where you'll be kind of like be able to play in a kind of Splinter Cell kind of way. So you'll be a stealth operative who will be sent out on missions. You'll use the same rules as Ghost Ops, but trimmed down, a bit more sort of with Ghost Ops rules, but light version. So you'll be able to play it with a book and some dice and as a solo player. So it'll be very much like a choose your own adventure type, fighting fantasy type, read a thing, go to that page, read the next bit. That's coming out later this year. And people who are playing Delve have sort of said that'd be quite cool to do a sci-fi version of Delve. So I'm looking at doing that as well, because I think that would be kind of cool. And Hunters of Chalice Lands, which is a kind of a 5th edition OSR crossover. That's another fantasy role-playing game I'm also making. That should be out probably later this month.
Cool. So yeah, definitely quite a bit for everybody to look forward to.
Yeah.
And I just kind of want to chime in a bit. Just you'd mentioned that your 2nd edition rule sets are going to be compatible with your 1st edition rule sets.
Yeah, so basically everything you can get for Ghost Ops now will be compatible with Ghost Ops 2nd edition. The rules won't change. They'll just be the only thing that will change is how they're done. So, for example, the one thing that will disappear will be packages. What you'll do is you'll choose the skills that make you that. The skills you choose during character creation, you basically form that way. So every operative will be able to do everything. They may just be better at certain things than other operatives.
Awesome.
So it kind of fits more in how operatives actually are in real life rather than how they in a role playing kind of way. So this kind of makes it a bit more realistic in that sense.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And also people who had invested in your original editions will still be able to get content out of those original editions. I'm sure Conrad is, and as well as you, Jay, have gone through several editions of, say, Dungeons and Dragons, where it's the new edition comes out and you have to get all new books. So having your content carry over into the new editions is awesome. I appreciate that as a gamer.
Yeah, no, I think something as a gamer myself, that it's something that annoys me as well, that people do these things and it's just like, ugh. One of the things we will be doing for modern day Ghost Ops, one of the settings books we're doing is going to be an SCP setting, Kill, Contain, Protect, which is kind of the more esoteric side of things. I'm hoping to be working with the actual SCP community to build this. So that's something that's quite exciting, really, for me. I mean, it's optional. You don't have to use it. You don't have to buy it or anything. It's an optional setting, but it's a bit more esoteric. And I kind of want to do 2 settings per era, if you like. One that's kind of more realistic, like an OSR, an OSS, SAS type Second World War setting, and also a kind of a steampunk Nazi setting. So you can have a choice of playing it as serious, we're going to go in, take out these guys and assassinate Hitler, or we can play it in more kind of, right, we now got these Nazis running around in steampunk type mechs that we've got to shoot with Tesla
like an
guns
Iron Skies vibe.
Yeah, kind of that sort of thing, really. It allows people to kind of see the game in 2 different ways rather than be constantly playing them the same way throughout.
That setting sounds right up my alley. I like that. Like the steampunk. I like it a lot. No, so we certainly appreciate your time today. This was great. We learned a lot about Ghost Ops, and obviously your story. I really can appreciate the effort that you put into taking, kind of like I talked about earlier, taking a really bad situation and really making the best of it and becoming successful at it. So I certainly appreciate that. I appreciate your time. Is there anything, if you want to plug like social media, where we can get your games, and everything like that?
Okay, so basically everything I do is on Drive-Thru under Feral Games Inc. So everything we sell is on there as PDFs and physical books. Social media-wise, Facebook, we have a Ghost Ops community, which is very vibrant and very active. An awful lot of ex-military on there and military, talking and chatting and sharing information. We also have a few Discord groups. There's a Ghost Ops Discord group, which has actually got a play-by-mail thing going on at this moment, or play by Discord, if you like. Ghost Ops game going on at this very moment as we speak. So that's quite fun. There's also a Black Eye Discord group as well, if you want to see the progress of that. So that's pretty much social media. I'm always happy to chat to people. I'm always happy to help and give advice. So, reach out if you've got a question. I'm always happy. I'm always here when I can. When I'm not busy or whatever, I'll answer as soon as I possibly can. But
excellent. All right. Is there anything else that either one of you guys want to add, Tony, Conrad?
I think this has been great. I really appreciate taking the time to talk with us, Jay. And I loved hearing your story, and I loved hearing about all the different games you developed.
Thanks for having me. It's been really good, actually. I enjoyed it. I like this formal chat.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a good time, and I know speaking for me personally, and I like getting everybody's story. I like hearing the other people that we've talked to, the creators we've talked to so far. Everybody's story is different, unique, and interesting. So I really can appreciate that and get behind it. So like you said, thank you very much for doing this with us today.
Thanks for having me.